You're listening to the Bust-Proof Business Podcast, taking your business to the next level by taking you out of it. With our experience and proven results, we'll help you find the success that many crave, but only we can help you achieve. It's time to get started with your host, Greg Murphy.
Hey guys, it's Greg Murphy from the Bust-Proof Business Podcast, and today is part 2 with KIB, my second mother. She's an amazing woman. Hopefully you guys really enjoyed our last episode with Karin. So on this episode, we get into her relationship with the Young Guns a little bit more. We talk about how they met and about, even though they're different, racially, socially, background, ages, obviously, how they really mesh together, because she gets into it a lot. But basically the way that social media and the internet just breaks down all those barriers, it's really interesting. And I really love how, e-commerce basically makes us all the same. Especially on the Amazon platform, and she gets into that a lot. We also talk about how she sold an Orson Scott card book, Ender's Game, for low 4 figures. That's really interesting how she did that. So without even selling it on an e-commerce platform. So it's a really great story. And this again is just the second part of just a conversation with someone that I think of as my mom. I really couldn't cut it down into just 30 or 40 minutes. I just really felt like there's so much content here that I want to share with you guys. So without any further ado, this is part 2 of my conversation with another mother of mine, KIB. So we met again. We met in Baltimore, and we've met a few times since then. But you got hooked up with these guys, Todd and Matt. And then some other folks as well, a goose. But when I met, there was this $100,000 challenge, and for a month they wanted to see who can get, and it was a joke, and then they ended up both busting through that. And it's these really young guys, and then KIB.
I know.
So how did that happen?
How did that happen?
Yeah.
It actually all started with Harvey Specter, also known as Mitchell Lip. He appeared in Q4 of 2014 out of nowhere in Scanner Monkey.
Which is a Facebook group.
Which is a Facebook group, yeah. I found him kind of intimidating because he was smart and new and aggressive and working hard and smart. And did I mention smart? And I didn't quite know what to make of him, but, I didn't think he would be interested in little old me. And then about 10 days or so before Christmas, he posted, "I'm about to make my last shopping weekend of the year. I'm planning on going to Target, Walmart, and another Midwestern chain. If anybody wants to swap lists, send me a message." And I thought, what a great idea. It's the end of the season, basically. It doesn't matter what you give away because you've shopped. And it doesn't matter what you get in return because, it's basically in the bag already anyway. Great way to start making connections. But people started piling on him. Comments like, well, what if I don't have that store in my area? Or what if I go and everything on your list is already sold out? Or what if I already know about everything on your list and you get all new things for mine? I mean, seriously, Greg, do those comments surprise you, or is that kind of what you might have expected?
Yeah, people are pretty. I mean, the reason why we always talk about relationships, it seems very, it's like, if you listen to the podcast, I talk about it all the time. And the reason why is that so many people are so close-minded and so like right now and me oriented that they don't understand the benefits of building long-term relationships.
Right.
And like, maybe not. Maybe this particular list will be better for one person than the other. But over time, building these relationships makes everybody better.
Exactly. And I was actually done shopping, but I was annoyed by these comments and the tone of these comments. So I fired off some sort of general slap about what a great idea it was, and then sent Harvey my list. And he messaged back and sent me his, even though I said, I don't think I'm going back into the stores. But what was amazing was that there was hardly any overlap on our lists, even though both of us had been stalking the aisles of Target and Toys R Us. That was the other store. The whole time. We knew about entirely different lines. What if we'd hooked up 12 weeks earlier? Just think what we could have done. So that was one lesson. The other was just that the two of us hit it off. It was like, there wasn't this 30-year age difference. We could relate on common ground all the same. And so I stayed in touch with Harvey, and he had gotten to know Matt and Todd, because Matt and Todd had come into FBA and had both come from the extreme couponing world. And so they started with not much money, but a stockpile of products that could be sold on Amazon. And, when guys do extreme couponing, it's like war. It's like, total scorched earth mentality. So they were very, very good at what they did. And they really quickly leveraged everything they knew about the grocery and HPC category into just growing faster than I think anyone has before or since. I mean, they were really kind of phenomenal. And Harvey wanted to get to know more about them and get them to teach him grocery and so on. So the three of them were sort of trading things back and forth. And then I'm not sure if Harvey told them about me or what happened, but they started messaging me with questions because I have a reputation of being a know-it-all. And again, we just kind of hit it off. And it was, I don't know if it was because it was a relationship forged online that we weren't really that aware of each other's ages and genders, or what it was. But and Dwayne and I had been friends for quite a while through Chris Green. I'd met him. Dwayne Malick. I'd met him and loved him from the beginning. So Providence came around, and you did not make it to Providence, did you? Right. And Matt and Todd were there. They got there late because of that challenge. I think they had to drive all night to get there or something, typically Matt and Todd. And Dwayne was there. And so I spent, the whole evening with Matt and Todd, and it was just great. It was fun. It was like, I found my tribe, And I think the same sort of thing for them, because that was the whole vibe of Providence. It was a small group, and we had all come together and we recognized one another. And not about, I guess, the next month maybe was the Momentum get together in Baltimore that you made it for. And I had been chatting in one of the groups with Agus Perwanto. And I don't know what it was about Goose. There was just something about this contagious energy and willingness to learn that caught my eye. And he'd sort of caught Matt and Todd's eye too, and wasn't that far from them. So at Momentum, I made a point of sitting next to him, introducing myself, and then dragging him over to meet Matt and Todd. And the three of them just bonded like that immediately.
And so one of the things that happens, especially with guys, is that there's a bit of one-upsmanship. There's that thing where if where these guys are clanging, and even though it's friendly, you want to beat each other. So it's let's do $100,000 in a month. And then those numbers start to increase and increase and increase over time, that now all of you guys have have massive, massive 7-figure Amazon businesses.
Yeah, no, it's incredible. And you're quite right. It was that initial bet that happened. I guess it happened in April. It happened in February. I forget which was the exact.
It was an off month.
Yeah, it might have been it was probably March, because February would have had Valentine's in it, which is good. So it was probably March, and it was the end of February. And Harvey and Todd and Matt were, sort of kicking it around the way guys do, and said, what are we going to do about March? This month is going to suck. And somebody said, let's make it not suck. Why don't we sell $100,000? And they're like, dude, you're kidding. You can't sell $100,000 in March. And it's like, no, we're really going to do it. I mean, I'm sure you can fill in the guidelines.
Yeah.
That happened. That nobody had ever done this. And nobody almost believed that it could be done. And yes, because the three of them went for it together, they pushed and pulled each other over the finish line. There was some trash talk in there, but there was also real support. Not that they necessarily wanted that to show, there was kind of more the trash talk that dominated. So Dwayne wanted to meet these guys who had done that. And of course, a goose wanted to meet these guys who had done that. And for whatever reason, because I still think I look like the one, one of these is not like the others. But I'm a necessary part of whatever it is that's so special about the Young Guns. And none of us know what that is.
And
just know that the chemistry of the six of us works.
And I've been in a room with you guys before many times where you guys will talk in front of me because it's all one ear out the other. I'm not even what they do is, to me, it's bizarre. Like the amount of time that you guys spend talking about things that to most of the rest of the world would seem to be, inane, like just random things. Well, this particular flavor or this color or this particular type of toy or item, the amount of time, like you guys know this stuff down. This is, just the way that other people will know books or other people know whatever. This is what you guys, it's not easy to sell 100,000 plus in a month. You guys know your business, and being able to sharpen each other is what I think makes that happen.
That's a good point. And a goose has been particularly such a wonderful addition. He really, in his quiet, crazy Asian way, really kicked things up. He'd been struggling to get to 30,000 a month. And Harvey, and here were these guys doing 100,000. So he just asked questions, listened, and implemented. I think Matt told him in Baltimore, the first thing you need to do is go hire someone to pack for you. So he went home and he hired someone to pack for him. And within 2 months, he'd had $100,000 month. And he worked his butt off to get there. There's no question. But that willingness to take action and extreme action. One of the anecdotes about a goose that I absolutely love, he is Indonesian, and as is his wife. And he was, he told his wife about meeting these guys, Matt and Todd, and what amazing hustlers they were, and, what he was learning from them and the rest of that. And, she just kind of took it in and, oh, nice, a goose has some new friends and so on. But they're, she's home with the baby and so on, and he's out doing that. And then one day she had his phone and was flipping through it and seeing these faces. And she said, who are these guys? And Matt looked over, or a goose looked over, and he said, oh, that's Matt and that's Todd. And she said, but they're not Asian. And it was not because he doesn't have non-Asian friends, he does, but because she assumed that no one other than another Asian would work as hard, let alone harder, than a goose did. And I just think that's cute.
Yeah, I think that you see that. Amazon works really well because, there's no barrier in terms of race or sex or any kind of background that could slow someone down in a traditional job. It just doesn't exist. When I graduated college, there were some local companies I had a hard time getting a job in. I wanted to be an economist, and I'm heavy. I was heavier then. And it was a hard time. I had a hard time getting a job. And so this was something that was great for me. There's people that, there is racism, there's sexism in the world. And something like Amazon, where it's a screen name, people are buying online, none of that stuff matters. And so I think that's a great equalizer in a world that we live in today. Although it was better 20 years ago, it's going to be better 20 years from now.
No, Amazon is a real meritocracy. If you put in the work, you can have the success. And I think the six of us, for all the differences in our backgrounds, are proof of that. None of us started with much at all. My famous line, which is that to succeed, you need 2 out of 3 things, or you need 3 things. You need capital, you need hustle, and you need network. But you'll be fine as long as you have any 2 of those, because you can use 2 of those to get the third.
Definitely. That's definitely true.
And I think that's what we've done. A goose at the end of last Q4, his homeowners association kicked up a fuss because he was working out of his garage and insisted he had to stop that. So he rented a storage unit nearby. The only problem was that the storage unit locked its gates from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. And he couldn't come and go then. And a goose normally stays up until, shops all night, stays up until 4, processes and so on. So he and his helper moved into the storage unit.
Oh my gosh.
To sleep and everything. I know. Well, that's extreme to start with. But when he was explaining it to Dwayne, or to the storage unit manager for that matter, because the storage unit manager found him and said, you're not supposed to be here overnight. And the goose said, but I've got to work and you close the gates at 10. What alternative have I got, man?
Yeah.
Whereas most people's alternative would be go home and sleep in your own nice cozy bed and just say, well, the storage unit is closed. I can't do it. No, he and his helper were in sleeping bags in this storage unit for Q4. Just shopping, prepping, shipping. Insane. But, you do what it takes.
Yeah.
Oh, and I was going to say, and Dwayne was an interesting case. The time Dwayne kind of came into orbit, he was ready for a change, I think. He will tell you himself that he'd gotten a bit lazy and a bit complacent, and income from coaching meant that he didn't have to sell as much. Kind of, I guess, like your booksellers who want to watch daytime TV all month and then go to the book sale. Not that he was doing that necessarily. And it was meeting Matt and Todd and Harvey and a goose and seeing that they were basically guys like him. And they're getting that competitive whatever it is that guys do going to get him to kick it up a notch. Again, it was some trash talk, some genuine encouragement. But more than anything, I think he'd quit having fun doing what he was doing. And we made it fun again.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Because of the community more than anything.
Yes.
Right. That's what it's all about. So let's double back. I think we might even make this like a 2-parter. I think we might even do not me and you talking, but releasing for the show. Let's double back because we could talk all day. And thank you very much. Do you have to go? Do you have some time?
I'm
okay.
good.
Wonderful. Let's talk about Antiquarian books because it's a place, even my business today, where I suffer immensely. We have some book dealers that come into our shop, and they'll buy the right to go through Gaylord of books, which is about 800 to 1,000 pounds of books. They buy the right to go through it, and whatever's left, some we put on the shelves, and the rest we recycle. But I keep going back and forth between hiring someone that knows antiquarian books to just be our ARC person, antiquarian, rare, collectible, that just does that all the time. So, I mean, I know there's a lot of money in it, but it's something that I don't understand. And so I guess what I'm asking is, will you move here to Dayton, Ohio and run my... You didn't have to laugh so loud.
Oh, Greg, if you'd offered that to me a few years ago, I'd have been there in a heartbeat, I think.
So, but no, can you tell me, maybe give us some tips, and maybe tell us your history with antiquarian books?
Sure. Well, what happened was simply that the community that I live in is relatively affluent, attracts a lot of retirees. It's a small university town, so, relatively, people come back because while it's a small southern town, it also has more quote unquote culture going on than might be typical. We also get a lot of military retirees because many of them have been posted in the area and gotten familiar with it. And many of them have had, overseas postings and that sort of thing. So basically, we're a community that skews older, better educated, more affluent. And so that means a lot of donations and downsizing. And so books would start coming through that looked like they might be valuable, but I didn't really know. And so I would set them aside to research. And one of the things you learn really quickly as a bookseller is that just because it looks old does not make it valuable.
Correct. And we have to reiterate that to a lot of our customers. We have the buyback, the buyback portion for the dollar book swap, where people come in and bring books and like, well, look, these are all Encyclopedia Britannicas from the 1980s. So they should be collectible. And unfortunately, that's not always the case.
Right. One of the truisms of antiquarian books as well is that, if in real estate, it's location, location, location. With antiquarian books, it's condition, condition, condition. The difference between a first edition fiction with a dust jacket and without a dust jacket can easily be in the thousands of dollars.
Let's talk about the copy of Ender's Game that you got.
Yeah.
I wanted to, for some reason I saw an ad on Facebook where they had this leather-bound collector's edition of that they're just releasing now with Orson Scott cards signed. I think I'm going to buy that for myself. But this is not that. Well, what are you talking? Because tell us all about the post and what's going on with that.
Okay. Yeah, I still don't quite understand that. Somebody posted in your book flipping group that he had found a first edition of Orson Scott Card's Ender's Game. And he had a picture with it, and it had the dust jacket, and it looked to me to be in very good condition just from that one picture. And he said, should be worth about $500 and a great collector's item. And several people posted and said stuff like, my research shows that's worth 20 and you'd be lucky to get that. And a couple more, not worth more than $20. And I'm like, what? What are you talking about? This is Orson Scott Card, who's important in his own right. And this is Ender's Game, which is the original seminal book. We're not talking about, one of the later ones. And so I quickly posted that if it was indeed a first edition, first printing, Do you want me to get nerdier now and
definitely.
explain what printings are?
Yes.
The first edition of a book is just that. It's the first edition. But there will be multiple print runs depending on popularity. And the only one that is really of value is the first edition, first printing. And you can tell that from the copyright page. There will be a line of numbers. And if the number 1 is there, then it's a first printing, except if it's an older Random House one, in which case it's the number 2 that you want to be there.
Is it not sometimes 0?
No.
Okay.
The 0 may be there, but it's the 1 that you want to see there. But in any case, there are small peculiarities between different publishing houses and between different books. But there are reference books which will tell you definitively. There are some exceptions. There are books where it's difficult to establish what is the true first printing. But in general, for any modern first, you can tell if it's the first edition, first printing. And that, because it's closest to the author, is the one that collectors want. So given a picture of the copyright page, it should be easy to tell if that's a first printing. But I then told a story, which is one of my favorite book hunting stories. I was driving up to Toronto and I went a slightly long way around and went through Pittsburgh because I wanted to hit some half-price bookstores there. We don't have them where I live, but there were several around Pittsburgh. And so I'd worked out a map so I could go to all the half-price bookstores. And I did very well. But while I was driving from one to another, I saw, I think it was a Goodwill in a strip mall over to the side. And I thought, well, it'll be easy to pull in there and just see what they've got. I remember buying a children's Catholic encyclopedia of saints. And I also noticed this very nice copy of Ender's Game, a hardcover with a dust jacket sitting there. And I just picked it up for us because we only had the paperback. And it's one of my favorite books and one of my boys' favorite books. And I just think it's great. So I thought, okay, I'll upgrade our copy. And then when I got home and looked at it, I realized that it was a first edition, first printing, and that it was in exceptionally good condition. But I didn't really quite want to part with it. Plus, Orson Scott Card is still alive, so there was always a chance I could get it signed. And in fact, about 3 years later, he came to give a talk at a local university. And I had a student there take it in and ask him to sign it. And he was apparently quite tickled to do so because he realized as soon as she handed it to him that it was, in fact, the first edition, first printing, and showed that to the woman who was sitting beside him. And he signed it. And my young friend, Jen, brought it back to me. And she mentioned to her boyfriend, who was my younger son, that we had done this. And he thought that was pretty cool that I now had a signed first edition of Orson Scott Card's Ender's Game. And on Twitter, someone that he followed posted that he was getting married and he wanted an engagement present for his wife-to-be. And what he wanted was a first edition of Ender's Game.
Really?
Yes. And so Ben tweeted him and said, what a coincidence. My mother has a signed first edition of Ender's Game. Would you be interested? And he was interested. So we then switched to email and negotiated the rest of it. So it was very rewarding. There were the elements of serendipity that I picked it up because it's a book I like and didn't have. I would never have stopped there and opened it because I would have thought at that point, because I was pretty wet behind the ears, I would have thought that the chances of finding a first edition on a random thrift store shelf in Pittsburgh were low. So if I hadn't wanted the book for myself, I would never have picked it up. And then the fact that I was able to get it signed, and then the fact that it went to someone who really wanted and appreciated it for someone else who would really want and appreciate it.
Do you mind telling about the price that you ended up getting?
Oh, yes, it sold for $2,000.
So that's not bad. That's
No,
a pretty
it's
good
not bad.
return for.
It's a pretty good return. Yes.
Yeah. So that's pretty amazing. So you're saying, though, since you're wet behind the ears, you're saying that back then, you're saying that now, if you were to go into that same thrift store, you wouldn't assume necessarily that there wouldn't be any firsts on the shelves.
Exactly. I've learned otherwise. In fact, I made a similar mistake very early in my book selling days with The Great Gatsby. My boys were younger then, and as you probably remember yourself, you can't get out of high school without having The Great Gatsby as a set book at some point. And on a library bookstore shelf, I saw a black hardcover copy of The Great Gatsby. It wasn't in great shape, but I figured it was going to come in useful when one or the other or both of the boys had to study it. And so I picked it up and brought it home. And then when I looked at it, I started getting little bookseller tingles. And there are specific points, which I don't remember off the top of my head now, about how you tell a first edition, first printing of The Great Gatsby. And it has to do with a misspelling on a particular page. But this had all of the points. The sad thing about the book, on the other hand, is that it wasn't in terrible condition, but it was the spine was a bit slanted. So it was sort of, and there was a bit of rubbing, and there was some lending library marks in it, and it didn't have a dust jacket. But still, there aren't that many first edition, first printings of The Great Gatsby around there. And I was able to sell it fairly quickly to another bookseller for $1,000.
Shoo.
I know. Well, and this is part of the whole thing of antiquarian books, is that there's basically an ecosystem. And certainly at that time, and I probably wasn't going to get much higher than this, I was at the level where I go out and find stuff and bring it to a specialist dealer who has the clientele to purchase it. He would be able to get a much better price for the book than I would be able to. And so he was able to give me a fair price, which was equivalent to what I would have gotten, say, selling it on eBay or on the open market. And it's one of those relationship things. It's arguable that I could have made more money auctioning it on eBay, because back then it was always a bit of a crapshoot and you never quite knew. But it again goes back to your point about developing relationships. I knew that he was interested in F. Scott Fitzgerald material. I offered it to him first. We agreed on price, and I now had another buyer for other items of interest in that period, had I wanted. So it's just a kind of, you scratch my back, I'll scratch your back sort of world. You make relationships as you go. Does that make sense?
It definitely does. It definitely does. Now, it makes me nervous because all of the books that over the years, we're going through 60 tons or so a week of books, mm-hmm. and there has to be, tons and tons of money that we're not making by not knowing any of this stuff. The books look nice to me. And we do the stuff that looks really, really great. We do like one of the big rules is anything that's in a slipcover does not get thrown out. It goes down the line and somebody does research on it. Okay. And a few months ago, this was after that rule was in effect. I looked at the top of a recycling box, a Gaylord box, and saw this massive set of books. And it was, daggone it, what was it? Pollock. It was a Jackson Pollock set of his prints, I guess, and this big slipcover. And it ended up, I looked it up on eBay, it was like $4,000 or $5,000. And the guys were just going to recycle it. And I'm thinking, my first thought is, wow, what else is there that I'm not seeing out of this one particular box, just that I just happened to walk in front of? And so after that, we're very meticulous about making sure that books that are in slipcovers where there's multiple books, and books that look like there's the golden gilding, that we make sure to check those out. But there are any other quick tips that you can tell me just in general, just by spec, just by looking at, without any particular book knowledge that might be helpful?
Well, obviously, if you get in anything where the dust jacket has been protected in what's often called a brodart.
Oh, yeah. Like the Mylar or whatever.
The Mylar, yeah. Book dealers and collectors will generally put a Mylar protector around dust jackets because they're the most fragile and also the most valuable. With any sort of dust jacket, even one that was in tatters, that copy of The Great Gatsby I sold would have been worth 10 times as much.
How do you know if the dust jacket? How do you know if the dust jacket went with that particular book?
Was original. Partly, you can generally tell because of the wear patterns. I mean, but there are experts on this. You can certainly have it examined, and paper conservators and specialists can tell, from the wear on the paper and the folding, whether or not it's always been there. And the other thing is that there are points of issue for dust jackets as well. There are, again, because I haven't actively been doing it, I don't remember all of the bits and pieces of knowledge. But for instance, To Kill a Mockingbird, there's something about Truman Capote's picture or a quote on the back or whatever. But, Greg, I just don't think there's a way around it when you run an operation like yours. Some first editions of To Kill a Mockingbird are probably getting pulped. On the other hand, this will probably get me drummed out of any serious book selling. It is an artificial value we've given to it, right?
Well, value is always...
You're the economist.
Yeah. Well, value is always value is a weird term because there's no value of anything that people aren't willing to pay for in terms of, as an economist and as a capitalist, right? I look at markets to tell me, and we can get way off track if we want to go deep into that, but yeah, markets are what they are, and that's what there's no intrinsic value to a piece of paper with words on it. But because of the fact that there's people that want that particular book with glue and the spine and the ink, that's what creates real value there.
Right.
So there's people that collect model trains. There's people that collect Lego minifigurines. Value is really in the eye of the beholder.
Yes, it is. And I guess my only point is that if you were to recycle the Book of Kells, the Irish medieval illuminated manuscript.
Okay.
I would be really distressed by that because I do consider that, that's a unique, singular work of art. But if you pulp a first edition of To Kill a Mockingbird, you could also argue that you're just making all the surviving editions more valuable.
Yeah, and I guarantee you, if I knew that it was the first edition of Killing Mockingbird, I wouldn't do that. But information is also expensive. Right?
Exactly. And is it really worth your time to, have a list of all of the modern firsts that might show up on your line and should get a second look? Because there are a lot of them.
It may be possible with, now this is going way down deep, but right now I don't think the technology is there. But there are these scanners that can take, 20 or 30 pictures of a book as it goes through, instantly. As it goes through within 1 second, it can take a bunch of pictures. And then, these pictures can go through a visual database and see if it matches anything just by the look of the book.
Oh, that would be interesting, wouldn't it?
It would be if it worked.
Okay.
Now, right now, we're not quite there yet.
Yeah.
But eventually, I think the technology will be there that visually, our line will be able to make those distinctions. There's
Right.
people that are doing it now, but from what I've heard, it's not going too well.
Right.
Because it is a lot of work. It's much easier to scan a database of 20 million books for the ISBN than it is to pictures. It's a lot more work.
Well, I actually have a solid suggestion for you if you want to invest in learning more about this whole world. It would take a week of your time, but you could take your wife and daughter along with you. The Antiquarian Booksellers Association of America helps to sponsor a 1-week seminar, which is held in Colorado Springs every year in July. And it brings together antiquarian book dealers from a variety of backgrounds to teach a 1-week course in antiquarian book selling. As much as anything, it gives you the overview of what's out there and what's possible. But the greatest value of all is in the people that you meet and spend time with and the friendships that are forged. I will tell you that antiquarian booksellers, in my knowledge, are the most generous people that I know of. Sure, they have trade secrets and trade craft, but they have been so incredibly generous with their knowledge with me, much like the gaming community.
Yeah, but you really don't think, though, that they would tar and feather me? I don't know. I think I represent. Maybe I'll have to go in a mask or in costume or something.
Yes, you do, and you would have to be prepared to defend what it is that you do. But I don't think you have a problem with that. You see, I think it's good for people to meet on common ground and to look at what they have in common rather than what they have different.
Yeah, we've had collectors on Amazon, people that are trying to buy our books on Amazon that were collectors, and they'll ask all these questions. I'm like, guys, you really should buy somebody else's book. I have no idea. I don't know. So, but there are people that do all that. But I've checked out the message boards, and I've stalked these people before, on the internet. Check out the ABA and everything, and they're very, very passionate about the way you're supposed to list books for sale. And in fact, to join, one of the rules you have to abide by is listing books with their points and things like that.
Yeah. Oh, I'm not suggesting that you become a member. All I'm saying is that it would give you a look into the world. And there are always young people hanging around. They may not even have been able to afford to come to that, but the people who are there will know them. There are people who desperately, passionately want to be able to work with books and would love to be your book person, identifying what's valuable and could be sold for more. And to me, it would be a simple economic proposition. If you could find someone that you liked and was either in Dayton or willing to relocate there, and they could make enough money to pay their salary and a bit more, maybe not even a bit more, depending on how book and community spirited you felt, then you would have a way of doing that. But I think you need to have a little bit more knowledge yourself of the weird and quirky world of antiquarian books. But I honestly think if you came and honestly said, look, this is how I sell books now. This is my model. I'm not going to change everything, but I'd like to find a way of saving the books that shouldn't be recycled.
Yeah. Yeah. And
it would be okay. In fact, if you go this summer, Greg, I will make a point of coming with you and protecting you.
I'm going then. Karin, if you're going to go with me, I will definitely go. My wife loves Colorado anyway. So,
good.
Yeah, I think we'll definitely go in July. That'll be fun.
Yeah, I mean, you
can protect me. You can protect me.
I will protect you. I will let them meet the real Greg. The days when it's in session are kind of long days, so it'll be her and your daughter on her own some of the time. But there's time before and after, and there's some lovely stuff to see around Colorado Springs. So
terrific. Well, I think this is a good place to leave. I think we could talk forever.
We could.
Thank you so much for being here with us today, Karin, and we'll talk to you soon.
Okay. Thank you, Greg.
Okay, guys, so I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Karin as much as I did. As you can tell, we do have a date to make it out to the American Booksellers Association event that they're having in July in Colorado Springs. So if you guys are down for a rockin' party, you can come out there to that event as well. So thank you guys again for listening. Till next time, guys, remember, make today count.
That's all for this episode of the Bust-Proof Business Podcast. Be sure to point your browser to bustproofworkshop.com to sign up for our mailing list and to get your opportunity to enroll in one of our specialized seminars, guaranteeing you continued results in typical bust-proof fashion. Thanks again for joining us. We look forward to taking your business to the next level right here on the Bust-Proof Business Podcast.